Let's make strawberry jam. So we are going to be using the Bernardin no sugar needed pectin, but we are going to add a little bit of sugar. So the recipe calls for 4 cups of just mashed fruit. And this is about how much strawberries I used, about 1.5 baskets, 2.5 pounds. So I mashed it till it's a little bit chunky. You're gonna cook it so it will soften a little bit. So you put that into your pot. I love using this one. It's the perfect one for jam. It's wide and it's a little bit deep, and it just lets it boil and cook really well. The recipe that I'm using actually is in the box. It comes like this, and they have cooked jam, cooked jelly, and even if you just want to put it in the freezer and you don't have to process it. So that's what I'm following. It gives you the instructions on the top, and I do it exactly the way that it says. So I've got my berries in there. It calls for 1/2 teaspoon of butter, and that's to reduce foaming when you're cooking it, because strawberries especially tend to really foam up. So put that in there. And then it calls for 1 cup of unsweetened fruit juice. And as I was thinking about this the first time I made it, I remembered that Habit makes a strawberry rhubarb, and it's their cold press fruit juices. And I have done a test batch with it and I love it. So we're gonna add this in. You could also use any kind of unsweetened berry juice. You can use unsweetened apple juice, which is like our Lepp's apple cider. You could use that. You could also use white grape juice, would be another good one. And now we're gonna take this and the pectin. We're gonna put the whole package of pectin in, and then we're gonna take this over to the stove, and then we're gonna bring this to a boil. So in the pot now we have the strawberries, the fruit juice, the pectin, and a little bit of butter. I've brought it to a full rolling boil. And now I'm gonna add the sugar, and I chose to use, like I said, just regular sugar, 1.5 cups, which is the lowest amount that it recommends. It will set without it. You don't have to add sugar, but I do like my jam a little bit sweet. So you're gonna put that in and stir that up, and then you need it to come up to a full rolling boil again, like a vigorous boil. And you're gonna boil it for 3 more minutes, and then it's ready to go into the jars. So when I talk about a full rolling boil, this is what I mean. It's really, you can't even really stir it down. And it still does foam a little bit, which isn't a problem. That's just an aesthetics thing. Tastes fine, you can eat it. You'll just stir it into the jam anyways. If you look at your jam now and it's almost finished cooking and you feel like it's a little bit too chunky for your liking, you can still take your masher, as long as make sure it's clean. And you can just mash it up a little bit and just get some of those bigger pieces and just mash it up. Okay, we're ready to put the jam in. It's finished boiling. I've got my nice little ladle, and I'm just gonna put it into the jars. And I always prepare a couple of extra jars. I make sure that they're clean, and all I do is I bring the jam in the level up to that ring inside my canning funnel, and you can see we're about that much headspace. And I was stirred in between each one to make sure I get an equal amount of liquid and strawberry chunks. And then we're gonna just put these into the jar. We've got our jam into the jars. These are 1 cup, so it made 5 of those plus a little bit extra, so we'll have a little bit for our toast. Now I'm gonna take a wet, clean washcloth, and I'm just gonna wipe the rim of each of the jars, just to make sure that even a little bit of liquid on there will prevent it from sealing. And you don't want that to happen. Give it a good clean. And then I'm gonna put my new lids on. And the rule used to be that you were supposed to boil these for a few minutes beforehand, but now they've changed that. And they say that as long as you're processing it for at least 10 minutes, you don't need to do that. And I haven't seen a recipe that processes for any less than that. And then you just put your lids on, and you don't wanna tighten them. You just wanna do finger tight. So everyone always says, what does finger tight mean? This is what finger tight means for me. I put it on, and I just give it a little, just as soon as I feel some resistance on it, I stop. And now we're ready to go into our canner. We are almost up to the right temperature for the steam, so I'm going to put the jars in. And you can see that the steam canner does create a lot of steam. And we're going to process for 10 minutes. And you want to make sure to use a jar lifter so you don't scald yourself. And an important thing to remember, whether you are canning with a regular canner or this one, you start timing after. For this canner, you start timing when it's come to the green zone that we're in, not when you put the jars in. And also with the regular canner, when you're using a boiling water bath, you can once the water has started to boil, not when you put it in. All right, we have our 10 minutes finished cooking time. I've turned the stove off. I've let everything settle down a little bit. The water has stopped boiling, and now I'm just going to take them out, and I'm going to leave them for about 24 hours before I put them on my canning shelf. And you will notice that strawberry jam is kind of notorious for this. It separates, like the strawberries will float to the top. You really can't avoid that, but all that you have to do is when you open up the jar and you're ready to eat it, just give it a stir, and then it will stay stirred up like that. But that is just something that strawberries do, and there's nothing wrong with it.